And you're live.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting tonight, and this is our second video meeting. It will be live streamed and available on the internet on the town's website after the meeting. At this time, on behalf of council, I'd like to extend our thanks to the town of Parry Sound residents and businesses for following the federal and provincial mandates during these unprecedented times, and ask that you continue to practice physical distancing and self-isolation. With Easter just a few days away, we'd like to remind the public that physical distancing is still required even over the holiday weekend. The North Bay Parry Sound District Health Unit asks you to keep your Easter activities, egg hunts, and family meals to individuals who live in your same home. Tomorrow, Wednesday, April 8th, the West Parry Sound municipalities invite our residents in a community cheer for essential workers. Participation is simple. All you need to do is step out onto your front lawn, driveway, balcony, or lean out a window and make some noise for essential workers by banging on a pan, clapping your hands, singing, or shouting to send a message of thanks from your home to those people keeping our community running during COVID-19. We encourage you to share your pictures or videos with us on social media using the hashtag Parry Sound Thanks You. Also, a reminder that the province of Ontario has implemented a restricted fire zone for the whole province, and anyone caught burning will face fines. Please allow the federal and provincial and health units directions. Please follow the federal, provincial, and health units directions. Stay home, help flatten the curve, and do your part to keep our community healthy. I will ask one thing, and maybe Ms. Johnson or Mr. Harris can say what time on Wednesday, April 8th, should they do that? Because I know in some communities it's at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, I'll have to double check that, but let's, if other communities are coordinating something at 7 o'clock, let's join the time as the same as other communities, so there's a common happening at a common time.
I think 7 o'clock would be a good time. Okay, thank you. All right, we'll get the meeting going here. Are there any additions or prioritization of the agenda? Seeing none or hearing none. Mover and seconder for the agenda. I've got Councillor Borneman and Councillor McCann, that the council agenda for April 7th, 2020 be approved as circulated. All in favor? That's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest of the general nature thereof? No? Okay. May I have a mover and seconder for the regular council meeting of March 17th, 2020? Councillor Keith? Councillor McCann, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held March 17th, 2020 be approved as circulated. Any discussion on those minutes? All in favor then? That's carried. I need a mover and seconder for the minutes of March 18th. Councillor Borneman and Councillor Keith, the minutes of the special council meeting held March 18th, 2020 be approved as circulated. Any discussion on those minutes? All in favor? That's carried. May I have a mover and seconder for the special council meeting held April 6, 2020? Councillor Horn and Councillor Burden, that the minutes of the special council meeting held April 6, 2020 be approved as circulated. Any discussion on those minutes? All in favor then? And that's carried. Okay. Any questions of staff? Councilor McCann.
Okay, am I on?
Yep.
This would be for Chief Thompson. And my question is, could you, for the benefit of the public, provide some clarification as to the legality of the use of our marinas, boat launches? Could you let people know about the enforcement and what the real law is? And for those who fail to follow the law, what some of the what some of the results could be? And also, as far I understood today as well, that the police are stopping cars on highways if there's more than 3 people in them. So maybe you could talk about the way people are getting around and what they can and can't do, and what the circumstances are if they don't follow the law.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. The overriding legislation that's being utilized at this time for these issues is the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act. And there were numerous orders that have been issued through the provincial government that would be contrary now to the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act if you were doing them. And most people are well aware of these. Such things as being in a group, public gathering of larger than 5 people. And then the essential service businesses being open. Those are the main things. Now, enforcement of these orders is falling to the OPP and has also been delegated to municipal bylaw enforcement officers. So if you're a provincial offenses officer, which all our bylaw officers are, as well as myself and John Tuck, we can utilize the short form wording fines to fine people for any of these acts. And there's many more. There's too many for me to list right now, and I would miss some of them. But utilization of park equipment, you know, there's quite a number of them. So the short form wording fine for those offenses range between $750 and $1,000. So that's a ticket right off the bat. And that just has to be written out by a provincial offenses officer and handed to the individual. If people are, if it's of such a nature that either the provincial offenses officer or a police officer would like to charge someone, then offenses can run up to $100,000. So those are being reserved for more serious offenses, such as businesses staying open that should not be, offenses such as that. You did mention police officers stopping people on the roads. I'm not going to be able to speak to that. I wish I could be more knowledgeable on that. I suspect that the OPP is trying to do a educational enforcement activity at this time. Gatherings, of course, greater than 5 people are the offense, not 3 people in a car. However, all that being said, what is trying to occur is the limiting of gatherings of individuals so as to slow the transmission of COVID-19. And I think if we can all look at it from an educational standpoint right off the bat, we can identify that there's many things that we're still probably practicing in our own lives that we could still have a better impact and better actions on in trying to limit the spread of COVID-19. And it's not for protection of ourselves in most cases, but it's for protection of the elderly or vulnerable populations. And so I think everyone needs to think of it in this light, is that you're not necessarily protecting yourself, but you're protecting other people, and people who maybe don't have the privilege that you have of good health, or are elderly, and others who've contributed greatly to our society in the past. And at this point, it's our responsibility to help look after them. So if we can start following those rules and practicing all the issues that the health industry is trying to advise us about, then we can do much better at beating the situation that we're in right now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any further questions? Councillor Keith and then Councillor Burden. So Councillor Keith, you're up.
Yes, my question is for Mr. Cairns. And I'd like to know, I've seen the street cleaner out working the machine and gathering up stones, etc. Two parts of the question is, what happens to all the gravel and sand that is gathered? And number two, are the plows put away, or are they still ready to go in the event we have a further snowfall?
Through you, your worship. So as far as street sweeping goes, the sweepings that are collected by the street sweeper are transported to our facility at our public works facility. We use them for various on-site uses related to our transfer station and landfill site. There are some things surrounding the reuse of that type of material, so it limits its ability to be used elsewhere. And as far as the snowplows go, our winter season extends until April 15th officially. So we are fully prepared should winter return up until April 15th and beyond that. Quite frankly, our staff monitor the weather and we keep equipment staged accordingly.
Okay. Councillor Burden. Oh, you've got to unmute, Councillor Burden. There.
That works better.
Yep.
A question for Mr. Cairns, Director of Public Works. I had a call a while back from a gentleman who lives up on George Street up near the museum. Gentleman happens to be a retired forester, and he is concerned about the fact that all of the red pine trees up on Tower Hill in his neighborhood are dead or dying. He's very concerned that when these trees fall to the ground, they might become what he referred to as a perfect storm for a wildfire if a fire happens to start up in that area. I just brought this issue to Mr. Cairns' attention yesterday, so I don't expect any long, elaborate report this evening, but Mike was going to try and get up and have a look, and maybe he can give us a quick rundown of what he saw when he went up there, if he got up there at all, and if you didn't, Mike, I understand.
Through you, your worship. Actually, I did have a chance to go up through that way, and he is correct. There is quite a large number of red pines that are not in good shape. So I referred to our mapping and have identified generally who the property owners are in the area. So it looks like the majority of the trees are on one adjacent property, and I can certainly approach that organization and we can have that conversation about what we can do going forward to alleviate that.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any then. Correspondence, Ms. Johnson.
Worship, there are no items of correspondence this evening.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We don't have any deputations, so we'll have reports, and we'll start with Councillor Keith.
Nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Burden.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Councillor Borneman.
I'll be quick tonight as well. No report. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor McCann.
Well, I can't say the same. I've got a couple of things to pass along here, so I'll try to be as brief as I can. Wednesday, March 18th, I attended the Town of Parry Sound special budget meeting in which, in addition to other business, the 2020 operating and capital budget was put forward. I participated on the afternoon of Thursday, March 19th in a Zoom conference hosted by the West Parry Sound Health Center, in partnership with our Director of Emergency and Protective Services, Fire Chief Dave Thompson. The purpose of that event was to update the health center's municipal partners and boards of directors on its COVID-19 preparedness and response. I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the great work and organization by the health center management and staff in doing everything possible to mitigate the effects of COVID-19. Thank you to the center and its people for doing such a courageous job at this time. I myself have heard praise and several compliments on the center's action plan, both in and out of town. Friday, March 27th, I participated in a special meeting of the board of the West Parry Sound District Museum. It was a full electronic meeting via Zoom. The meeting was necessary to make some urgent decisions following up on water damage sustained as a result of a burst pipe. Very, very fortunately, no artifacts were damaged. Much remedial work is underway for certain portions of the building, including the kitchen, the washrooms, the lion's room, hallways, and light fixtures. Of course, the museum remains closed due to the COVID-19 thing, but the museum will be working on pumping up its online presence. We have a board meeting scheduled for this Thursday evening, again via a Zoom teleconference. The regular Belvedere Heights Board of Meeting scheduled for March 25th was canceled due to COVID-19. We're arranging an electronic meeting for April 22nd. And again, I'd like to thank all the staff and folks and volunteers at Belvedere Heights for their courageous work, the frontline workers, the PSWs, everyone working to keep COVID-19 at bay. And one more item, Friends of Belvedere bottle and can collection. On behalf of the Friends, we want to thank everyone for their support. Just to note that our receptacles are now filling up and becoming a little untidy in certain areas. And we'd ask for you to hold on to your returnables for the time being. We can't collect them, we can't return them. And if you've got a humongous pile that we'd be happy to pick them up, all you got to do is get in touch with me or one of our volunteers, and we'll do that when this COVID thing is all over. We can still take your aluminum soft can cans at Sobeys in the container at the back of the store there. And we thank you for your support. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Backman?
Nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Horn?
Thank you. I have no report other than to say thank you to all the frontline workers in this community, that they are absolutely our heroes in this war. I see it every day at community living and what our staff do to keep people safe. So I just want to, on behalf of this community, just say thank you to the frontline workers in healthcare settings, in long-term care, at community living, at the Friends, mental health, the grocery workers that keep us fed, and absolutely amazing times. And proud to be Canadian, proud to be Parry Sound. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a short report for myself tonight. On March 23rd, I was part of an advisory panel on climate change that has been struck by the Minister of Environment. And I made a presentation on behalf of AMO at that particular panel. I also made them aware of our net zero community project that is being worked on with Lakeland Power and all their partners. And that, you know, the ministry, you know, kind of is in a position where they don't have a lot of money. Certainly we weren't asking for any money in our particular stance, but the point I made was don't get in their way either of trying to make something happen. And that's what is trying to happen is, you know, they're trying to make this go on the former landfill site. And, you know, we don't need a lot of breaks or obstacles thrown in our way from the Ministry of Environment to get further approvals than what are actually needed. So that's That was done by Zoom meeting, and then March 26th and 27th, I had AMO board and executive meetings, which were all done by Zoom meeting. And then the meeting that Councillor McCann was talking about on the 30th of March with regard to the West Parry Sound Health Center meeting. And I will echo the comments that the West Parry Sound Health Center is doing an absolutely amazing job. And I really do appreciate the updates that they put out there, making us aware of what's going on, and it is greatly appreciated. And that's my report. So we will move on with the agenda. We'll start with item 941. And 941 was an addition, and it's moved by Councillor McCann and seconded by Councillor Borneman. The council support the recommendation of staff to limit non-essential boat travel during the COVID-19 pandemic and advises the public that effective immediately, the Salt Dock, Wabano Beach, Champagne Street, and Mill Lake boat launches will be closed until further notice. Any discussion? Councillor Keith.
Yes, if this is approved tonight, will there be a posting so people clearly know that this is happening?
There should be. We have staff person that wants to comment on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's Dave Thompson.
Yep.
So we're going to do a few things. Mr. Kearns has his staff ready to be blocking off the boat launches if this is passed tonight. At the same time, we will be advising the public through the media, through our social media pages specifically. This has also been done in most of the other municipalities already. So the word is out there significantly that boat launches are being shut down in the area. The other activities we'll be doing is we will have blockades that are physically in the way of the boat launches, and we'll have signage on them explaining why, and you know, the aspect that this is a temporary closure, and that when it's appropriate, we'll be lifting those closures. That signage will be going up tomorrow morning onto the blockades. We're also concerned that there may be individuals who have launched their boats, and when they come back, they're going to find blocked boat ramps. Any vehicles that are in the vicinity of the boat ramps, we're going to be putting special specific notes on, advising them to contact the municipal office if they come in and they are going to be having a problem getting out of the water. Those calls are supposed to come directly to myself or Mr. Kearns, and we'll be dealing with them on an immediate basis so as not to disrupt any of those boaters' lives too drastically when they come back.
Okay, thank you. And the block will be much more than just a stick with a piece of paper on it, right? Chief Thompson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm actually going to let Mr. Kearns speak to that because he's having his staff do that. So he'll give you a specific example of what's going to be occurring.
Perfect, that was good.
So we've made arrangements, and actually they're referred to as jersey barriers. You'll see them as large concrete dividers on highways. They're modular. So staff have obtained those through a generous partner, and they are on site at each of the sites with staff this evening being prepared to deploy them.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Borneman, did you have your hand up? No. Okay. Was there anyone else? Nope. Okay. All in favor? And that's carried. The next is item 951, and it's moved by Councillor Borneman and seconded by Councillor Burden. Whereas in order to fight the COVID-19 virus in your community, it is important to understand the status of confirmed cases in that community. And whereas the catchment area for the West Parry Sound Health Center is only a portion of the area served by the North Bay Parry Sound District Health Unit. Now therefore be it resolved that the North Bay Parry Sound District Health Unit publish statistics that provide the number of confirmed cases and other appropriate information for West Parry Sound, and further that this resolution be sent to the municipalities of the West Parry Sound area, the West Parry Sound Health Center, the Honorable Minister Christine Elliott, Minister of Health, and MPP Norm Miller. Discussion. I don't see any hands up. So all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Next, I have a bylaw. It's item number 10.1.1, and it's moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Horn. That bylaw number 2020-7036, being a bylaw to enter into an agreement with 18 James Street for the rental of wall space for an art exhibit at the Charles W. Starkey Center for the Performing Arts. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Horn and seconded by Councillor Bachman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor McCann.
Yes, thank you. My question only would be, are we charging rent while the Stockey Center is closed, or will this kick in once once the COVID-19 thing is behind us?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Thanks. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did put an addition into the agreement that states that the annual rental fee will be prorated based on how long the facility is closed. So it'll be $50 a month less the annual rental fee of $600 plus HST. If we're closed for, another month or 2 months, 3 months, whatever it may be, the annual invoice will be produced once we're open to the public again and back to normal.
Fair enough. You got a follow-up, Councillor McCann?
Yeah, yes, I do. Could we put that amendment in then? I think it's only fair.
Yes, sorry, it is in the it's in the attached bylaw for the agreement. It is listed on there.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's been identified then.
Yes,
Yes.
Sorry. Yep.
Okay, my mistake. Thank you then.
Okay.
No
I have
problem.
Councillor Keith and then Councillor Borneman after Councillor Keith.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. I'm wondering, Ms. Mullen, what are the projected sales for the next 2 years? Because there wasn't a lot of sales in the previous period of time. And do you have an idea as to the, if it's 3 events a year, is the year just being divided into thirds? And the event will be per thirds, or are there any creative ideas there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to estimate how many pieces of artwork will be sold over the next 2 years is a bit difficult. We have found that the artwork is kind of about 2 pieces a year are sold. The pieces can range in price, so it's not an everyday item that most visitors are looking. It's more of an investment piece. We are ramping up our marketing efforts to help better promote and raise awareness about the local art exhibit. There are a few other places in town that we're kind of collaborating with. Sorry, can you repeat the second part of your question? Do you mean the 3 different exhibits or the different rental events that's part of the terms and conditions of the agreement?
No, I mean the 3 different exhibits.
Right. So that is a new idea from 18 James Street. The logistics of it haven't been worked out yet, but their intent is to do 3 different themed exhibits throughout the year. I'm not sure what those themes are at this time, but I am assuming that it will start in our busy summer months and then possibly be more so spring, fall, and spring, summer, fall, and then winter was an idea that was presented by 18 James Street. But again, they're still working out the details of that.
Thanks.
Councillor Borneman?
Ms. Mullen, while you're at the mic, could you explain to the public what process was used in making this selection?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. A bit of a recap. In the winter of 2018, Council directed staff to issue an RFP for an art exhibit at the conclusion of the previous art agreement. The RFP was issued in February of 2019, and in March of 2019, Council accepted the proposal from 18 James Street for a one-year term. The current expiration date is April 30th of this year. So we are recommending a 2-year renewal of the agreement with the same terms and conditions. So this was the first year with 18 James Street, and from staff's perspective, it was successful. There were a few rotating exhibits with up to 8 local artists, with as many as 40 pieces on display at once. We had 2 pieces that were sold, and 18 James Street hosted 4 different events at the center that were related to art classes and workshops, which was another source of revenue for us, along with more exposure to the center and increasing our facility usage, of course. Sorry, did I cut out there? My phone's acting funny.
Still hear you.
Everything just went blank. Okay. All right, did you have a follow-up to your question?
No, that's very good. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Councillor Bachman?
Yes, could you please confirm, Nicole, that commissions from the sales of paintings is based on all painting, like all artists that are being participating with the 18 James Street?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, every piece of artwork that is on display in the facility is entitled to the commission. So if it's sold in person, over the phone, or online, and it's on display in our building, we receive the 10% commission on that sale.
Thank you.
Maybe a question for Ms. Mullen. Are the pictures that are on display in the Stocky Center, are they online?
Yes, most of them are. 18 James Street manages the online shop, and they update it as the pieces are rotated in and out.
Okay, all right, no, that's good. Yeah, that's that way at least there might be some virtual sales. It's good. Any further questions on this bylaw? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Item 10.2.1, it's moved by Councillor Horniman and seconded by Councillor McCann. Whereas the declaration of a state of emergency by the province of Ontario due to the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in a widespread closure of businesses and layoffs or loss of jobs. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the application of penalty and interest on the 2020 interim property tax billings will be waived for the applicable dates between April 1st and June 30th, 2020. And further, that the penalty of interest on water and sewer accounts be waived between April 1st and June 30th. And further, that transfers to taxes and the disconnection of water and wastewater services on past due accounts be placed on hold between April 1st and June 30th, 2020. And further, that non-sufficient funds, NSF charges, will be waived for both property taxes and water and sewer accounts between April 1st and June 30th, 2020. And further, that a bylaw be passed to make the above amendments applicable bylaws. Discussion. Councillor Borneman?
I'm not sure if this question is for Mr. Harris or Ms. Phillips, but obviously there's a cost here to the town. The end of June doesn't seem like a, by watching what's going on around us, doesn't seem like a very long time away. So I'd like to know what the costs are in this move to the town, because I fully expect that we may have to look at extending this further at some point.
Through Mr. Mayor, I believe the cost for the deferral or the waiver that's in place is in the neighborhood of 15,000. I think Ms. Phillips could answer if there's an extension of that beyond that period.
Yes. So the approximate cost for everything, for all of those items identified, is between 20,700 and 22,000 for a 3-month period. So if that was extended beyond 3 months to 6 months, that would go up like by almost double. So that would be just over 40,000 to 44,000 approximately. And the recommendation in this report is currently to do it for 3 months, but we could revisit that once we're ready to come back with the tax bylaw that strikes the tax rates for 2020 for the final billing. So we could still revisit that at that time, whether we thought this was necessary to extend this or maybe examine different types of relief.
I think that would be a wise plan, since this has to do with the current one that we're working on right now. And then we can deal with the other at that particular time. But we certainly, to make it very clear, we still hope that people can pay their taxes and their water and sewer bills. And that, if they need to, payment plans can also be set up so that payments can be made. It doesn't mean that you don't have to pay the bill, because you still do have to pay the bill, but we're just allowing, there is no penalty on it for that period of time. So, if you're having issues, contact the town office and see if you can set something up so that, payments can be made through this, or, at the very end when this is, but we'll revisit this again later on. So, and I appreciate this coming forward, because I know that there are people out there that are facing some tough times, and I think this is a good move on the town's part to support the community in these tough times. Councillor Keith.
Yes, will we be putting this, assuming that it's approved tonight, will we be putting this clearly on the website so that people also know? And will it be advertised anywhere else so that, again, people know and are less worried, those that are going to have serious financial issues?
Yes, so we're working on a release that would identify the different types of relief that will be provided and the payment options that are still available, which will include, you can make adjustments to your payment plan, like the mayor had identified, or you could put a temporary hold on it and then have it reactivated at a future date if that's what's necessary. I just want to mention too that the regular notices will still continue to go out as planned, so that people can still be aware of what's outstanding and have a good management of their finances that way.
Okay. Councillor McCann.
Hey, thank you. I just put this out here as food for thought. I think we must be cognizant of the fact that, and I'm trying very hard to be very positive that by the time summer arrives, we'll be on the rebound. Many folks will be just beginning to catch up. So even if the COVID-19 thing is over, there are a lot of people who are going to be trying to play catch up with other bills and such. So I think the hardship for some is something that's going to be a reality for a while beyond the COVID-19 epidemic.
Any further questions? Councillor Bachman?
Yes, with regards to the 3-month period versus longer length of time, I would have to agree with Councillor Bordeman's thoughts about this going longer. And I'm just wondering if, you know, the long-term effect of us providing some relief now based on versus, you know, what I'm hearing in many of the different levels of government sessions that I've sat on, that many businesses, obviously residents as well, the economic impact that this will have, that maybe there will be peace of mind if we do extend this past the June, because really we don't know, and it is probably just around the corner.
Well, I can have Ms. Phillips clarify this, but I think what we're doing right now, and if I understand certainly our tax structure, we're working on the current taxation that is in place right now. And then there will be another bylaw come up at another date later, which will deal with the new taxation that will be set, what we've done in the current budget. So if at that time we can address that issue, if we need to extend it, then we can address it during that time. But right now we're dealing with the current tax structure. Ms. Phillips?
Yeah, so we normally prepare 2 different tax bylaws. So one's an interim tax bylaw, and then the other bylaw comes in late spring where we strike the tax rates. So in order to do this for a longer period of time, we would have to update that bylaw and the interim bylaw to extend it past 3 months. We know that we would have to come back for the final tax bylaw to change that once we're ready to do that. So it sort of makes sense to come back at that point and evaluate the situation and the receivables and how things are going.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Burden? You're muted, Councillor Burden. Councillor Burden, you're muted. Good.
Okay, that's just, all right. Ms. Phillips, I presume this applies to both residential and commercial properties? This tax relief?
Yes, so this would apply for all different tax classes. So it applies for all taxpayers.
Okay, I have I guess I'll call it a suggestion that I wonder if it would be possible when we announce this relief, if we could suggest to landlords, I'm thinking particularly in the downtown area, that if we're going to consider giving them some relief as far as their taxes are concerned, if they could consider giving some relief to their tenants. I know it's not something we can mandate, but hopefully it's something we can suggest and ask the tenants to be as lenient as they can with, or the landlords to be as lenient as they can with their tenants over this next couple of months.
If I'm not mistaken, I think the province has already done that. They are suggesting that, you know, there be some leniency with regard to tenants. Is any, Mr. Harris or Ms. Phillips, do you have any comment on that? Oh, Mr. Beaumont.
Through you, Your Worship, over the last couple of weeks, I've sat in on some webinar video conferences with MFOA and OMTRA. And to what Councillor Burden is suggesting there, that the recommendation from the expert panel was that not to do anything really quick with the landlords of business properties because of the federal and provincial programs that are out there. Let them follow through first, and then, you know, long range, we could look at something then, but they say short term, put something in place like you've done tonight or going to do tonight, and then anything long term, we can look at it, you know, 4 or 5 months down the road.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Borneman?
And just a quick reminder, Mr. Mayor, that Lakeland Power has put out that they're also willing to work with people with respect to their power bills over the next number of months as well.
Yes, that's right. And that's good. Yes. Anything further on this particular item? No? All in favor then? And that's carried. None opposed. So now we have the bylaw. Moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor Burden, that bylaw number 2020-7031, being a bylaw to amend various bylaws to provide for temporary penalty and interest relief on taxes, sewer, water, and NSF charges due to economic hardship as the result of the COVID-19 pandemic. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? And that's carried. Moved by Councillor Horn and seconded by Councillor Keith, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any further discussion on this particular item? Nope. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Item 10.2.2, moved by Councillor Keith, second by Councillor Backman, that bylaw number 2020-7032, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a transfer payment agreement with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding the funding under the Municipal Modernization Program. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? It's good. It's carried. Moved by Councillor McCann and second by Councillor Burden, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Discussion. All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Burden, second by Councillor Borneman, that bylaw number 2020-7033, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a letter of agreement with the Ontario Minister of Transportation regarding funding under the dedicated gas tax funds for public transportation program. All in favor? And that's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Backman and seconded by Councillor Horn, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor McCann.
Yes, thank you. This would be for Ms. Phillips. Can you explain what this is about? We don't have a public transportation program, at least not in the way that we used to at some point. What is happening with the monies? I think the people will recall that we were able to help Belvedere Heights buy a van just shortly after we removed that public transportation program a few years ago, back in 2015, I think it was. So what is the state of things now, and what is this money for, or how will it be handled?
Yes, so this funding, originally it was used to purchase the accessible vehicle, which is operated under agreement by Belvedere Heights to provide local transportation service. The funds that we receive are placed in reserve, and they're used to pay for any expenditures that come up for maintenance on the vehicle or for the future replacement of a new vehicle that was required.
So follow up then?
Yep.
Okay, so how much do we have in the kitty right now then?
I would have to do some research and go back and see what's all in the reserve. So typically we receive approximately 57,961 per year.
Okay.
So we would have received a similar amount last year as well. And
Well,
that's how much yeah, so I'd have to go in and see what the balance is as of right now.
okay, so
Report back.
So somewhat being involved with and I know that we have a number of needs in town, but being heavily involved with community support services and the transportation program, can we, that's a good chunk of money, and yet it's not enough to buy another van. Is it, has the community support services or Belvedere been availing itself to any of this money for maintenance? Because I know there is ongoing maintenance and warranty work and such that, not so much a warranty work, but just standard maintenance that you need to do. Has it availed itself to this money, or are we saving this for yet another van? I know that another one will be needed within the next couple of years. I put you on the spot. Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, but I can report back to council on what the balance is and what types of expenditures that we've been using that for. It
Okay,
requires
that's
more
fine.
detailed inquiry.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yep. Any further questions on this particular item? Not seeing any. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. So moved by Councillor Backman, second by Councillor Keith, that bylaw number 2020-7034 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an amended municipal funding agreement with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario's Main Street Revitalization Initiative. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor Borneman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor Keith?
Yes, Ms. Phillips, what is the impact expected to have on accessibility in downtown if we go through with this bylaw that is before us?
So this bylaw will essentially just extend the project date, the project completion date, because the project, which involves signage along the downtown and a marketing plan, a downtown business association marketing plan, and some summer planters and beautification aspects along the main street. That was expected to be completed by March 31st of this year, but they've run into some difficulties with suppliers in getting the signs in time. So the amendment's required to extend the project completion date to October 31st, 2020, to make sure that we don't risk losing the funding.
Okay. Any further questions? No? All in favor? And that's carried. Moved by Councillor Backman and second by Councillor Burden, that bylaw number 2020-7035 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2004-4653, the zoning bylaw as amended for additional dwelling units, the town of Parry Sound. All in favor? And that's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councilor McCann, second by Councilor Burden, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time passed, signed and sealed. Any discussion? Councilor Borneman, then Councilor McCann. You're muted, Councilor Borneman.
Great. My question is for Mr. Algie. I understand why you're bringing this forward, that this is provincial policy and it's reflected in our official plan. But I'm wondering if the province takes into account issues that arise from this policy with respect to parking, and whether or not we consider issues, particularly with new builds, regarding water capacity and pressure and wastewater and such, because if you're designing a subdivision with 30 units, for example, and you end up with 50, I'm sure the dynamics change.
Through your worship, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay. The province is largely all in on this. They have put a mandate out and put it right in the Planning Act that the council of each municipality shall bring these types of policies to life. As it relates to parking, they've actually passed a regulation stating that tandem parking is permitted province-wide. So they have deemed it in the interest of all of Ontario to permit largely secondary units, or whether the basement apartments or in a second story of a garage, as such an interest in order to address the housing shortage matter. So they did take it in consideration, and they passed a regulation for parking, for instance, that that doesn't matter, you can do tandem parking spaces. That being said, they individuals will still have to provide on-site parking. So if you have a basement apartment unit, you need 2 parking spaces. In regards to your second question, we do take into account water and sewer capacity. We run water sewer capacity checks on an annual basis to just make sure our overall plant capacity, keep an eye on it, keep it monitored. And that would have to now start happening as well for larger subdivisions.
Did you have a follow-up, Councilor Borneman?
Well, I guess, Mr. Algie, yeah, my follow-up is, as I said, with a new build in particularly where you have 25 or 30 units, how are we able to accurately determine whether we've got 25 or 30 or 50 to 60 units in a subdivision? Because, you know, that number of units does have an impact with respect to some of those issues, the water and sewer issue in particular. I'm just thinking, do we have to guard, you know, like, do we have to count that as double towards our capacity moving forward, everything that we approve, in case these people double up? You know, I get what they're doing, but it just seems to me that you know, I hope the expectation isn't that we're reserving these things for something that may or may not get built in future.
Through your worship, we will have to take into account and come up with some type of methodology in our annual water sewer capacity calculations on trying to figure out a rough approximation on how many infillings or intensification units there will be. So a partial yes to your question, what that's going to look like, I don't think anyone really knows yet. That being said, basement apartments were largely permitted in all the R2 and R3 zones, which is the lion's majority of the zones in town. And we weren't getting applications in with regular frequency for this. So I'm not sure what actual impact this zoning bylaw amendment will bring, but it does open up every residential zone, largely.
Okay, Councilor McCann?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess this won't come as a surprise to anyone, but I am very much against this. I understand the spirit of what this is behind. I think the province thinks that this could be a one fix for everybody. The broom is too wide. And I would like a recorded vote on this. I'm against this. I think that we still, and I'm not against additional housing and housing that people can afford, but I think we need to look at a neighborhood by neighborhood situation and make decisions based on that. If you've ever looked into the research or studied urban cycles, if you look at a particular neighborhood at one time was all single residential dwellings, you start converting them into 2 and 3 additional apartments. Eventually you have owner absenteeism and you have a complete change in what the neighborhood at one time was. And so I think there's lots of history we can look at. I don't like this the way it's written. The room's too wide. I'm not, as I suggested, I would be in favor of looking at a neighborhood by neighborhood situation. So I will not be supporting this.
Okay, well, let's go to any questions that anyone might have beforehand. Any further questions? Councillor Keith and then Councillor Backman.
Yes, my question, Mr. Taylor, is, and I realize that what is before us, we're in respect to the zoning bylaw, we're not talking about parking per se. And at the end of your report, it did indicate that the parking issue would be dealt with for zoning. So I just wanted to be clear. If this is passed tonight, will that be examined a little further?
Through you, your worship, if I don't answer this question correctly, please feel free to let me know. So the way that this zoning bylaw amendment is dealing with parking is just permitting what the province is allowing called tandem parking. Largely, that's just when you have one car parked in front of another car. That is now provincially allowed. Whether or not we had it in the zoning bylaw is largely irrelevant because the province passed a reg, but it is always nice to have local bylaws match the provincial rules. This isn't getting into really the size of parking spaces or the numbers. It's still one parking space per dwelling unit. So if you have a basement apartment, you need 2 parking spaces, one for the primary user, one for the renter.
Okay, Councillor Backman. Councillor Backman, you had a...
Oh, yes, I just wanted to know with regards to the zoning bylaw, it would be applicable for all current builds as well as new builds?
Through your worship, it is on all residential zones, largely within the urban area that aren't waterfront properties existing, and that would be the same for proposed builds as well. Yes.
Councillor Keith, you had a follow-up?
Yes, I was just wondering, again, when Taylor was explaining about the tandem parking, then is there some sort of limit in respect to, or designation in respect to accessibility parking in, if this is passed tonight?
Through your worship, I don't believe accessible parking provisions under the AODA Act apply to private households. I don't think a private household is considered an obligated organization. So I believe that is a no to this specific amendment, Councillor Keith.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, my comment is that this is something that the province wants and is looking for municipalities to participate in. So, Ms. Johnson, I guess you have a roll call to do.
Yes, Councillor McCann has requested a recorded vote on bylaw 2020-7035, which is to amend the zoning bylaw to permit the additional dwelling units as has been described. So I'll take it in alphabetical order. Councillor Bachmann? Yes. Councillor Borneman? Councillor Borneman, either raise your hand or, sorry, speak. You're in favor? Councillor Borneman, sorry, Councillor
Yes.
Burden? Councillor Burden, are you in favor? Councillor Burden in favor. Councillor Horn,
Yes.
in favor. Councillor Keith,
Yes,
Councillor Keith in favor. Councillor McCann,
Nope.
Mayor McGarvey.
Yes.
The vote is 6-1 in favor of passing of the bylaw. The bylaw is passed.
Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next moved by Councillor Horn and seconded by Councillor Bachmann that bylaw number 2020-7038, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement with the Township of Carling, the Municipality of McDougall, the Township of McKellar, the Town of Parry Sound, the Township of Seguin, the Township of the Archipelago, and the Municipality of Whitestone for a mutual assistance agreement for a 10-year term. All in favor? That's carried. Are all members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Horn and seconded by Councillor Keith that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Discussion. Councillor Keith?
yes, Mr. Thompson, can you just advise why it would be an agreement for 10 years? What's the rationale there, please?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, I apologize. I had a little bit of problems getting myself unmuted. This agreement has been in place previously. We actually, all the municipalities participated. This is back in my day before being in Parry Sound. I was in Seguin then. And we initially instituted this agreement in 2006. And then we renewed it again. And so that was for a 5-year term. We renewed it again in 2011 for another 5-year term. And in 2016, it never got renewed at that point. And what we were finding as emergency management coordinators was that 5 years goes by very quickly. And with the agreement not getting renewed in 2016, simply because it slipped through our fingers, we recognize that with 5 years passing so fast, this is a good agreement for everyone, in our opinions, and that it might be easier for us to manage if it was for a longer period of time. Hence the 10-year agreement this time, just so that we're not having to come back and institute it again time and time over. Emergencies don't come around that often. We're dealing with an emergency right now, and this is the first time where there's been declarations within the area for a very long time. And hence, the years go by fast, and therefore it seemed to make sense to us to have the agreement for a longer period of time.
Okay. Any further questions? Nope. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor McCann, that the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? And that's carried. Moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor Burton, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. All in favor? And that's carried. So prior to adjourning, I'd like to offer the following information to the public regarding the next council meeting. The next regular meeting of council for the town of Parry Sound is scheduled for Tuesday, April the 21st, 2020 at 7 p.m. Contingent upon the declared state of emergency continuing, this meeting will be held by a Zoom video conferencing, not as an in-person meeting in the council chambers. It will be live streamed and recorded. All regular council meetings are held at 7 p.m. on the first and third Tuesday of each month, except January and August, where only one regular meeting is scheduled. The council meeting schedule, notices of special council meetings, complete agendas and minutes, and instructions on accessing live streamed and recorded council meetings are all posted on the town's website at go to www.parrysound.ca under news and public notices. Your TV airs council meetings on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. following a regular council meeting. For Cogeco listings, contact www.yourtv.tv. I'd like to thank everyone tonight for their participation in this meeting. I see Councillor Horn has a friend there now with him, and I think it went really well, and I appreciate everybody's patience and contribution. And I hope the public realizes that to do these meetings is a step beyond, but we are being open and transparent to the public, which I hope they appreciate. And so self-distance yourself, make sure you wash your hands a lot, and try to stay put. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Night.